This is going to be a very interactive presentation today, so because your collective knowledge is far, far superior to what I might be able to contribute, I'd like to thank, first of all, the CTO for inviting me, and thank you all for coming out on this very un-June-like day. So I appreciate it. And how is everybody doing? All right, that was really lame. How is everybody doing? Okay, very good. All right, let's see. If I close this, is that okay? Okay. So I'm going to begin my talks about authenticity in travel tonight with a few observations. So by most reckonings, there are 33 island destinations in the Caribbean, from Haiti, which is the Western Hemisphere's poorest country, to the Tony upscale St. Bart's. They also include desolate Montserrat, lush Dominica, and the still forbidden fruit, for the moment anyway, the island of Cuba. Yet it seems that increasingly people I speak with in the industry are expressing concern that the region is perceived as falling into the rut of homogeny. Now, as some of you know, every year I organize a roundtable of consumer travel editors, and during the one I held a few years ago, the Caribbean was singled out for criticism. The travel editor of the New York Times felt the island's marketing was out of step with today's focus on experiential travel. People want, and this is a quote from the New York Times editor, the opportunity to be in a tropical setting and yet have access to something authentic. Similarly, Afar magazine's editor-in-chief observed, there's no sense of, I should go to this island as opposed to that because I'm going to get a deeper cultural experience by connecting with people in one place versus another. And National Geographic Traveler's editor-in-chief added, they've sort of sold themselves to a common denominator. I wouldn't say it's the lowest common denominator, but I think they burned out a whole bunch of consumers. Now, around that same time, I had a conversation with a vacation packager who sells the Caribbean, as well as other sun and sand destinations. And he said the problem is differentiation. When you're on the beach, the sand, the sun, the water is the same. Even though each island has its own musical heritage, reggae is all you hear. Now, in my experience, Caribbean culture is alive and well for those who take the time and trouble to look for it. I remember my very first trip to the islands very well. It was in October 1987. I'd been invited to speak at a convention of Travel Agents International. It's an organization that doesn't exist anymore. And it was at the Cable Beach Resort and Casino on New Providence. Now, because it was my first time there, I planned to spend a couple of extra days in the Bahamas. One colleague said, look, I can show you everything that there is to see in one day. And he took me to the Straw Market and Queenie Steps and said, that's it. But I knew there was more. And so when the conference was over, I rode on jitneys all over New Providence, through Bainstown and Grantstown. I went out to St. Augustine's Monastery, and I met Brother Henry there, who sold me some guava duff from their bakery. I met many Bahamians on the jitneys, and a woman named Gladys invited me to her church social the next day, and I went and ended up meeting the Minister of Health. I went to Potter's Key and bought some conch fritters from a woman named Lisa, and also arranged with two guys named Harley and Charlie to take their mail boat to Hatchet Bay on Eleuthera the next evening. On the boat, I shared a cabin with Oreen, Othello, and Lobo. We had a great time, thanks in part to the wine that Lobo brought and shared. Now, I didn't think much about it at the time, but today that trip would be labeled experiential and authentic. And now in those days, there wasn't a lot of demand for authenticity on a trip to the Caribbean. The goal was for visitors to stay in as nice a resort as they could afford. And in aggregate, the islands had properties that could accommodate most people at any price point. People were satisfied with local color rather than authenticity. A limbo show often seemed to do the trick. And the wealthy were very happy to remain within a cocoon of affluence, and in fact, they demanded it. But today, a new traveler is emerging, one who rejects the symbols and trappings of old guard status symbols and wants to do more than simply sit in the sun and drink rum punch. They don't want to wall themselves up in the iconic classic hotels that their parents aspired to inhabit, and they aren't satisfied with only tokens of local color. In looking back at that first trip to the Bahamas, a few things stand out to me. First, I remember the names of the local people I met. Second, I remember the food that I ate. And third, at no point did I interact with the travel industry. It was of no use to me at that point in connecting to local culture. But today, authenticity and experiential travel are more than just buzzwords. They're vital, and the travel industry at every level must at least offer the opportunity for authentic experiences to travelers. And this is a worldwide phenomenon, by the way. The Caribbean is competing for those desirable affluent travelers with destinations whose cultures are attractive, exotic, and different, ones which they maybe weren't able to visit easily a few years ago. Myanmar has sort of come out of nowhere, and everybody wants to go there. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'm hoping this microphone, I don't know if this microphone's going to go in and out. It's going to, well, let's see what happens. Okay, so how many of your clients have expressed an interest in visiting Cuba? It's 90+%. I mean, that's pretty, well, no more. Okay. Okay, we're going to check and see if we can get me a new microphone. In the meantime, I might have to work with this one. So, do you think, now, why do you think they want to go to Cuba? Just raise your hand. It wasn't accessible previously. Other thoughts? The culture and history? I'm sorry? I mean, I think a lot of it is, yes, sir? Were you going to say something? To see what communism looks like. Okay. No? That's maybe that's a side benefit. I don't know if it's a primary benefit. Yes. Family or relations would be one reason that people might be going, for sure. Yes. The experience of going someplace that they haven't been before. I mean, so the question really is, can you make other Caribbean islands as interesting as Cuba? I mean, are there enough things that are the differentiation points? Do you know enough about the other islands to make them as exciting and sellable as Cuba? Right now, the Cuban demand is coming from the ground up. I mean, the people are just knocking on your door, hitting your website, ringing your doorbell, whatever. They're wanting to go to Cuba. But I would make the argument that, in fact, any island in the Caribbean could be made, could be sold, could be as exciting to anybody hearing you talk about it as Cuba. And the thing about Cuba, because I know a lot of probably the destinations get a little nervous when people talk about Cuba because, you know, there's going to be a lot of high demand for it for a long time. Cuba is a really big country. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's bigger than Switzerland. It's bigger than Austria. It is a third again as big as the Republic of Ireland. So there's going to be a lot for people to see, and people will be going there for a very long time. Maybe. I mean, the fact is that most of them will be going to Havana and Veradero, and you know, they're very likely not to kind of go to the other places unless they have a very adventurous spirit. But I do think that there are some aspects of the other Caribbean islands that are certainly as interesting and sellable. So this is where I was hoping to take the microphone out and get some of your opinions about what it is that you have either experienced, that your clients have come back and told you about, or that you use to sell other Caribbean islands. So we may have to do this a little bit. If we've got one. There's a lot more that is actually found and differentiated from people who actually go there. And if you go to, I'm sorry, we got some more music.
No, did you want us to sit?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, you can sit. Yes.
Compa.
Opa. So, yeah, I mean, we could go on. I actually, yes?
Mento.
Mento, and that's new to me. If you go to the Wikipedia page, by the way, and just do Caribbean music, it is amazing, the variety, and it goes on and on and on and on. Likewise, Caribbean food. I mean, people tend to think seafood or variations on conch fritters, but there are as many, and each island, by the way, has several specialties when it comes to music, when it comes to food, when it comes to just about anything. Now let me ask you, do any of you consciously try to incorporate experiential travel into your trips? Or if somebody says they just want to go, you kind of start talking about resorts and all-inclusives. Do any of you kind of really make a point to get people into communities, experience the cultures? You do.
A lot of islands, we have church members in a lot of the places. So we go, some of them go and stay in the people, you know, in the houses and stuff.
Okay, so you do homestays too. Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. What are some of the other things people do to get people perhaps out of their resort hotel room? And talk about which island, if it's island specific.
Well, I usually like to incorporate food, so maybe a cooking class, some kind of activity like that.
Thank you.
Jazz, you have in Jamaica, I believe.
Jamaica? Yeah. And where do you send them in Jamaica?
Where in Jamaica exactly? I think Kingston.
Now, yeah, okay. Not many people who come as tourists get to Kingston. That's true. Anyone else? Yes. Hold on. I'm at the wrong end of the room. 1 second. We'll start at this end.
I want to put a plug in for Jamaica because they have Meet the People. They've had it for years, and I've met several of them, and it's the best experience.
Okay. Yeah. Sir?
The nightlife, which would be like parties and clubs, Trinidad and Jamaica, most famous for that.
Yeah. But let me say something. Jamaica, Mobay is good for resort, but Kingston is also fabulous as well, and you get to meet the old Kingston experience. There's Devon House. Ice cream is the best in the world. It's a wonderful house to look at and to really experience what happened, that someone who, back in the day, went to South America, got a lot of money from Venezuela in the gold fields, went back to Kingston, purchased 90 properties, and one is a historical monument. It's really, really cool. And New Kingston is really safe. You know, I've lived there for about 9 months, but I'm from Guyana. We call ourselves Caribbean. It's on the south, the northern coast of South America, sandwiched by Dutch Guyana and Venezuela and Brazil. And it's just a beautiful place, so we call ourselves Caribbean. Now, the food there is different to Caribbean islands. We have pepper pot and curry, and there's all sorts of things you can do. When you get to Barbados, it's a different experience, and a lot of Guyanese live there. A lot of Guyanese live in Antigua as well. So each Caribbean island is actually different.
There's a great deal of differentiation. You have the advantage of being sort of a 9-month visitor. You're getting to kind of explore beneath the surface. Does someone over here had something they wanted to add? Yes?
I've done volunteer experiences in Jamaica.
So voluntourism, which is another whole level of deep immersion into a culture. Other islands, other experiences that you've been selling. Yes?
So I actually have a blog as well, and I do a lot of work with adventure travelers. So I'm always trying to promote excursions and adventures and all over the place, and they are definitely distinctly different in each island.
Yeah. And I think the point is, I think what's been made here by several people is that island by island, there's a tremendous amount that is unique to that island and which is as sellable as anything else, because part of the reason that everyone wants to go to Cuba is the unknown, right? It's this great unknown. On each of these islands, there is a great deal that is unknown, and that if you bring it forward, it makes that island that much more is sellable. Let me ask, are any of you aware of a packaged product that includes experiential and authentic elements, things that you might get through a wholesaler or a vacation packager? Yes.
Whenever you go to Cuba, you have to do a meet the people. You have to get immersed in the cultural. You can't just sit on the beach and do nothing.
And the people who come back from those trips are incredibly enthusiastic and have a lot to talk about, more than that they say, I saw a lot of old cars and drank a lot of rum.
I believe in Jamaica they have a program called Meet the People, where you can meet the people there and also meet people of the same profession that you want, the educators or this one or doctors or so forth. And there is a program in Jamaica for that.
Now, Jamaica's been way ahead of that, for a long, long time as well. So yes, hold on.
Well, a few islands organize very nice jazz festivals and carnivals. So if you book packages within that time with those events taking place, that's more than just sitting on the beach,
Yeah, and it's also St. Lucia, she mentions, and that's also often a good place to meet not tourists from other places, but also locals. Many islands have carnivals, which are great times to be sending people to them. I went through the trade show and asked representatives of the smaller islands if they would give me an example of something that was experiential or authentic that they had. And I skipped the larger ones because they tend to have a lot more that you just stumble upon when you're there. So let me give you some of the things that people were telling me about. So on St. Vincent, in addition to the carnival, the representative told me, be sure to talk about the national dish, roasted breadfruit with jackfish. And so in a lot of these things, again, as travel agents, if you know someone is headed somewhere, doing a little research and finding these sorts of things out are the types of things that, A, build loyalty for you and also, of course, enhance the experience. In Turks and Caicos, the fish fries, where everybody mixes, the locals and the tourists all come together. I was in Turks at the beaches that were there. And the all-inclusives present their own challenges when it comes to having and presenting authentic experiences. I mean, it's just good to remember that if there are people stationed at the entrances, they're not there to keep you in. They're maybe there to stop people from wandering in. But in various all-inclusives that I've been to, I have gone out and wandered. Sometimes in the grill, it's easy to kind of go and check out things locally. But in Turks, it was a little bit harder, but we were recommended that we go to a place called Boogaloo's, where they have conch, unlike the freshest conch you're ever going to have. And part of the experience is they actually kill the conch right there in front of you and give you the brain, which looks like a little thread to eat, which my 8-year-old daughter actually did. It was wonderful. British Virgin Islands, full moon parties. Martinique, Tro Islet is a place where you can both learn about the heritage, about the slave heritage, and also learn to cook and eat with the owner of the attraction. Barbados, in a town called Oistins, there's fish fries where the locals set up fish shacks and people can come. And again, it's very much a mix with locals sort of experience. Grenada, because of its what it grows there, the chocolate and the spices. There is, you've heard of farm to table and fish to dish. They have beans to bar, like chocolate beans to chocolate bars. You get a cocoa tour that takes you through every stage of how it gets from one to the other. And there's, with the emphasis on spices, lots of the restaurants also include an experiential aspect that talks about what it is that is grown locally, and they too offer homestays. St. Lucia, the mud baths. Has anyone here experienced the mud baths? This sounds pretty good. This is, yeah, you got to go before 11 a.m. before it gets too hot, I understand. But you get good and immersed into the mud. Everybody does it. You come out looking 10 years younger, I'm told. And don't go in more times than decades old you are, I guess. Now, it's interesting. The representative from Cayman Islands said that talked about the safety of the islands and basically said, you can go anywhere. You can just go anywhere and everywhere. You know, when I was in the Bahamas, it was really interesting on that trip where I took the jitneys around. A number of people said, be careful, watch it, do this. I didn't have any problems. I mean, I think a lot of times there's, I am lucky perhaps, but I think also you should scout out what a situation would seem. If everyone's telling you don't go there, well, then probably you shouldn't go there. But you shouldn't let it stop you from experiencing what there is to see. I've certainly found that to be true. And Nevis, and I was very curious to hear what the Nevis representative would say because, the Four Seasons is there, and while they don't have any all-inclusives on Nevis, I was wondering if people ever do get out of the Four Seasons, and she told me that the Four Seasons actually has a dine-around package, that they encourage people to get out and actually see a bit of the island, which I think, frankly, is very smart. It's a beautiful island, and it's an opportunity for people to come away from their experience with something to talk about and feel that they've actually been somewhere besides the beach and the golf course. And finally, in St. Kitts, just said, go to the Strip, hang out with the locals, and that the nightlife there is very, very good. So overall, it was interesting in talking with the people. Everybody had immediately a thought of an experience or an activity that could come under the umbrella of authentic and experiential. And again, as a travel agent, the work you put in a little bit on the front end in finding these things for people will more than reward itself for having the client having a great experience and for building loyalty. So the final thing I would say is, and I talked a little bit with Fernando about this, is that when the Caribbean is marketed as a whole, that not a lot of emphasis is necessarily put into the distinctiveness. It might say on a map, here are the islands that have diving, here are the islands that have this attraction or that attraction. And it's very hard for an organization like CTO to go deep into each of the islands. But in a way, regional destination marketing is going to ultimately have to begin to drill down. And I think embrace and point out and highlight the differences. And for the individual islands, I mean, the CTO has its work cut out for it, but the individual islands are always kind of dealing a little bit with their own parochial issues. And it's difficult sometimes to do as much cooperation with other islands as would be beneficial for the whole region. So that too is just something that ultimately works to everyone's advantage when they do work together and are able to point out what is great about what they do as well as what complements it among their neighbors. So thank you all very much, and I hope the entrees come for you very soon. Okay, thank you.